Good Erev Shabbos, Chullin Daf Pei Zayin. We're continuing with the sugya of Kisei Adam, the chiyuv to cover blood of any chaya that you shecht or any bird that you shecht, but not for behemoths that you shecht. The chiyuv is primarily for the shoichet, the one who performs the shchita, because it says v'shafach v'chisahu or v'chisa, the shvicha, the one that does the shchita, he has to do the kisui. But if he doesn't do it, then the responsibility falls on any person from Klal Yisrael that sees the blood uncovered. He must perform the kisei as well, because the following pasuk says "Va'imar livnei Yisrael," which is an interesting lashon. Why does the Torah have to say that? I said to Klal Yisrael. It's going on the previous pasuk that the chiyuv is on all of Klal Yisrael. There's an amazing halacha here in the Gemara, and this is a halacha for all of Shas. We learn it from this Gemara. Chullin Daf Pei Zayin. That when it comes to mitzvahs, you have to treat mitzvahs with respect, because the pasuk says v'shafach v'chisa. With the same hand that you do the shchita, that's the hand that you do the kisei adam. Do not use your foot. Don't kick dirt around to perform the mitzvah of kisei adam. You have to treat mitzvahs with respect. Says the Gemara, there's an amazing story, a crazy story. There's a guy that shechted an animal, and his friend came along and performed the kisei adam. He was so upset, he took him to Reb Gamliel for Din Torah. Reb Gamliel said that the person that did kisei adam must pay the shoichet 10 zuhuvim. Now 10 zuhuvim is enough to live on in the times of the Gemara for 15 months. It's a tremendous amount of money. Says the Gemara that the schar of mitzvah, when you steal a mitzvah from somebody, you must pay him 10 zuhuvim. Says the Gemara, it's not just for the mitzvah, but if there's a mitzvah that has 4 brachas, such as Birkas Hamazon, you must pay the person 10 zuhuvim for each bracha. 40 zuhuvim total, salary of 5 years for stealing a bracha. Says Taisvis, what's the problem? Let him just shecht another bird and then let him do no, because the first mitzvah that he performed is gone. You want to do another mitzvah? That's fine, but he stole the mitzvah and that's no longer in the world. You pay him 10 zuhuvim. And the Gemara brings another incredible story to prove this point that the chiyuv of 10 zuhuvim is on each bracha, not on each mitzvah. There was a tzduki that asked Rebbe, he says, it seems like from the pasuk, ki hine yoitzer harim uvayre ruach, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu perhaps didn't create the mountains and the wind. It seems like there's two different Rebbeinu Shalom's Chas v'Shalom. Says Rebbe Shoita. Just finish the pasuk. It says Hashem Tzva'ai Shemai. It's one. It's one Hashem that created both. Apparently, in a battle of such sorts, it's a life and death thing. The tzduki was taken aback and he said, "You know what? Give me 3 days. I need to think about this. I need to come up with some sort of rebuttal." Says the Gemara, Rebbe went and fasted for 3 days in order that the tzduki shouldn't be able to come up with an answer. At the end of 3 days, Rebbe went to eat. He was hungry. And as soon as he sat down to eat, there's a knock on the door. His family tells him the tzduki's at the door. Says Rebbe, there's a pasuk that says, Vayitnu bivarusi roish v'litzmai ashkuni choymet. They're putting bitter stuff into my food. I finally want to sit down and eat, and all of a sudden the tzduki's at the door. Says the Gemara, it turns out it wasn't that same tzduki. It was another tzduki that came to tell Rebbe, I'm coming to tell you good news. The tzduki, he couldn't come up with an answer, and he jumped off the roof and killed himself. Says Rebbe, you know what? You deserve to eat with me. Come sit down and eat. They were finished eating. Rebbe did not want the tzduki to perform the bracha or even to say amen, says the shach. He wanted him out of the house. He wanted to get rid of him. So he said, listen, I'll make a deal with you. I'll give you 40 zuhuvim, salary for 5 years, on condition that you leave right now and you don't participate in my Birkas Hamazon. Or stick around and you don't get any money. The tzduki said, I want to stick around. And in fact, he did the bracha, and says the Gemara, because of that, the tzduki had a schus that he became a huge politician with the Romans. They even called him a name that was Miramez to Rebbe's name, Bar Lunios, like the son of a lion, because Rebbe was a lion. Now we learned in the Mishnah that if he covered the blood, and the blood became uncovered, you no longer have to cover it for the second time, because we have a miyut. And the pasuk says v'chiso, you cover it once. Whereas by Hashavas Aveda, if you have a very annoying neighbor that keeps on losing his stuff, you must return his ox or whatever it is, over and over 100 times. Because over there, by Hashavas Aveda, there's no miyut. The Mishnah says, however, if the wind covers the blood, you're not mechuyev to cover it because it's already covered. There's nothing for you to do. And if Rabbi Yochanan explains the Mishnah, the wind, it became uncovered again, then you're mechuyev to cover it. But why? It was already done, the mitzvah. The answer is because there's no dichuy by mitzvahs. You cannot push off a mitzvah. The mitzvah was never done. It was just not available. But it was hanging around. And once it became available again, then it became your chiyuv to do it. But if you did the mitzvah once, then you have a mir of chiso that you don't have to do it a second time. However, by karbanos, we find the concept that there is a dichui. For instance, if somebody brought a carbon, and it turns out that you can't bring it on the mizbeach because there's a small, tiny nick in the mizbeach, and that doesn't allow us to bring the carbon. They have to repair the mizbeach. So since at the time that you brought the carbon, there was no mizbeach, it became dachui, it became pushed off. By karbanos, once it's pushed off forever. Says the Mishnah, that blood became mixed with water. Can we do kisi adam on it or not? Says the Mishnah, that as long as it looks like blood, strong color and a strong consistency, then it's considered blood. So let's take, for instance, just for argument's sake, the ratio would be 2-to-1 ratio, 2 times water, 1 time blood. Anything more than that, it's not blood. Says the Mishnah, the same thing would apply to wine. Since wine is red and you don't really know how much wine there is, it looks like good blood, red blood, but if you have the same ratio as water, 2-to-1 for instance, then it wouldn't be good. And the same thing would apply to the blood of an animal and the blood of a behemoth, which is not chayiv, and the blood of a chayiv that you just drew when he was alive, so there's no chayiv kis adam. If that got mixed in, there's no kis adam. Rabbi Yehuda says there is kis adam by blood because ein min b'minoi batal, since it's the same type of thing, blood and blood can never be batal, and therefore 1 drop of chayiv blood in 1,000,000 drops of behemoth blood never becomes batal, and you would have to do kis adam to that mixture. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan says, tremendous halacha, that when it comes to the mizbeach, like we said before, that there's dichui by mizbeach, there's dichui by karbanos. This halacha of blood and water ratio only applies if the water fell into the blood. But if blood fell into water, each drop that fell into the water became batal. And then yes, afterwards you have 1,000,000 drops of blood, and they could get together and gang up against the water, but that's too late, because they became dachui, and when it comes to the mizbeach, it becomes dachui. However, by kisi adam, says Rav Papa, if each drop of blood fell into the water and it became batal, one by one became batal, but then later on they got together and they had a consistency of blood, it looked like blood, then there is no dichui by mitzvahs, and they will gang up against the water and they will win, and you would need to do kisi adam. Now, we mentioned the other day about blood on a knife. The Gemara said that you could scrape it off and it'll be chayiv b'kisi. Says Rabbi Yehuda, when is blood on a knife chayiv? And we pass him like Rabbi Yehuda, and that's why today we don't do kisi adam on knives of sheikhim, is because there's other blood. We could be samech on other blood, do kisi on the rest of the blood. You don't have to do it on the knife. You don't have to do it on blood that fell on the wall somewhere. In order to make peres susceptible to tumah, they need to be sprinkled with water or blood. So what if you have rainwater that was never touched by a human and never put aside to drink? Maybe it's to water a field. It's not susceptible for tumah. And it got mixed with blood. And you have that ratio. It looks like blood, but you have 2-to-1, let's say. So if it's less than 2-to-1 ratio, then it's still good to make peiros tamei. And Rav Asi comes along and says, we're talking about the serum of blood. If blood congeals, then part of it becomes see-through, becomes yellowish. That doesn't have halach like blood. And if that has 1 kazayis of blood and somebody eats it, he's chayiv kares. If it has a revius of real blood in it, even though it looks white, then it will be metame ba'oil. Have a wonderful Shabbos. I will see you on Motzei Shabbos, Be'ezer Hashem. Have a great day.